The alginate from our preliminary impression video was made with the intention to have a custom tray fabricated. The stock tray doesn't carry, confine it, or control the impression material as well as custom trays do. So that's why 98% of dental schools in America use custom trays. Now, because the preponderance of schools using custom trays may make us feel like we need to be using custom trays, the reality is the literature doesn't support that. We're teaching this here because it is very commonly taught, very commonly used. In fact, many practitioners are not using it either, but it doesn't mean the literature says it's bad to use a custom tray. It's just there's no real validated difference. So the desired traits of a stone cast for a custom tray are moderate strength, moderate anatomical reproduction, and low cost. So we can obtain these basic principles, basic ideas with a low-cost Type 2 model plaster. The stone is weighed and water is measured according to the manufacturer guidelines. So though a vacuum mixer which pulls air out from the mix and auto-spatulates the liquid could be used, which is routinely used to pour casts because it makes casts stronger with less expansion. It makes liquid stone easier to pour. The improved values are not necessary here, so we'll just go ahead and hand mix at this step. So the stone and the water are hand spatulated to manufacturer's recommended time and then vibrated into the impression. The thixotropic migration of the stone into the impression from basically one position is used throughout the pouring procedure until the entire impression is covered. And then we'll go ahead and make a base. Okay, so here we're filling the tray, making sure we get the periphery. We don't want to go overextended beyond the, like you see there on the side. We'll wipe that away before we're done. Right now what I'm doing is I'm creating macro mechanical retention pillars. This is a old school technique for basing. This is done for pedagogical reasons only. I don't routinely do this. This is showing us one way for us to allow us to set up the impression with the intaglio surface facing up, and I'll show you what I mean. When we set this tray down, the intaglio surface will be facing up, and it allows all of the stone, the heavy particles of stone, to migrate to the base, allowing a stronger base, a stronger cast surface. Now with that stone set in the impression, as time has passed, the stone is set, I'm going to mix up this dental stone again. And this dental stone is going to be used to actually base it. So gypsum products are all powders of calcium sulfate hemihydrate that when water is added to them, they become strong. There's four different types of stone, the four different types of stone obtain their different properties by their chemical and mechanical processing, which is strange. But so it's basically the same material, just made different ways. And actually there's 5 types, but we only talk about 4 because the earliest type, which was called type 1, was historically used for impression, but it's no longer in use. So knowing that there's 5 helps in understanding the numbering system the dental industry uses today. So the 4 types are type 2, model plaster, type 3, dental stone, type 4, high strength, low expansion dental stone, and type 5, high strength, high expansion dental stone. So then we're just basing this. After it's already set on the intaglio surface, we can make the base here without worrying about decreasing the strength of the surface of the cast. Okay? So now we've got our cast. The set stone is now ready to be used to fabricate the custom tray for the final master impression. Uniform impression material is the key. Now, a proper thickness has also been one of the long considerations, and so we usually use a wax spacer. For alginate, you'd use 2 to 3. You want about 6 millimeters, 5 to 6 millimeters of space. For PVS, you want about 1 to 2 millimeters. So you'd use 1 to 1.5 millimeters of 1 to 1.5 pieces of wax relief. Here, I'm passing on it. We're just going for the uniformity rather than the proper thickness. The reason why we're making that change is it's not going to make a big difference, and the time saved does make a difference. So what we're doing is now we're adding this triad by Dentsupply. This is one of the more common things used by labs today. It's a light curable bisacryl resin basically, and we'll go ahead and start applying it to this stone cast. And we'll start concerning ourselves with obtaining the proper extension into the vestibular areas. Once we've got it uniformly contacting the cast, we'll start cutting around for the vestibular extension. So there is some variation in thought on how far to extend the custom tray from the vestibular areas on the cast. But since the border molding usually will need about 3 millimeters from the muscle extension, that room for freedom of movement so you don't cut the cheeks and you're not overextended, and the PVS will need, like we said, 2 millimeters from the same extensions, then for this video, we're going to say about 5 millimeters away from the vestibule is appropriate. Okay, so that the lips and cheeks can get away from the alveolar ridge to allow the air to escape when the impression is closing in on the ridge, without being too overextended to be pushing into those tissues, okay? So we'll just go ahead and continue to shape this cast here, this dense supply product called Triad, and I'm moving it around the frenum, the labial frenum. You can see the reductions of 5 millimeters all the way around. Now we're going to put a handle on. The handle isn't going to be tipped out into the mouth, into the face. It's going to be tipped back so we can play with the lip. You notice we've given that custom tray one spin in the curing unit so that I could pull it off without it sticking, and then we'll go ahead and give it a long-term cure. I want you to look at the handle. It is tipped back towards the tongue so that it doesn't affect the lips. I've trimmed the edges so they're nice and smooth so they won't cut the patient. Now this is interesting. What I'm doing is air abrading the surface so we get a better retention. So that's the end of the custom tray, and we're ready to move on to the patient's mouth, okay, to take our final impression.